Rally racing is arguably one of the most fun and lowest barrier to entry motorsports out there, but it can seem really daunting to get into. So this is 5 simple steps to get you into rally racing, and you're going to want to stick around for number 5. It is arguably the most important, yet the most overlooked, and probably the simplest. So the very first step actually has nothing to do with looking for a car or modifying one if you already have one. It is to get online and look for organizations in your area that actually do rally racing. This could be a major organization like the American Rally Association, could be a smaller regional association, or even a local club, or just events that are held at your local track. Go online and just search. Put in your town or city, search topics like rally racing, stage rally, rally cross. You can even look at organizations like the Gambler is doing the Hoopty X challenges all over the country now. Being able to get seat time is infinitely more important than any type of modifications or builds you could do on your car. And to be honest, it's just a lot more fun. So many people burn out because they spend all their time wrenching and planning on their vehicles, but they actually don't get to race them enough. Make sure there's a rally organization in your area. If there's not, I really just wouldn't recommend getting into the sport. Rallycross is typically easier to get into. It's smaller tracks. They're usually like a little dirt track. You can show up with pretty much a stock car as long as it's safe and just race and have fun for the day. Speaking of rally, we are finally getting out and racing this weekend, which is long overdue. As you guys could see, the old girl's in pretty rough shape. I think 3 out of the 4 tires are flat. She's sitting in about 6 inches of water right now as the snow melts off. But we did roll the fenders on this thing in preparation for whenever the heck it got out and raced again. We're excited to be doing that, but you can see there's a lot more that this thing needs right now. The battery also was extremely dead. So first things first, let's air up those tires, get a fresh battery in it, and see if it'll fire up. Gotta be my favorite thing about this old car is that it just works. So once you found the rally association or associations or clubs that you plan to race with, you want to go over their rule set. If it's one of the bigger ones, they're probably going to follow the American Rally Association, which has a huge professional rule packet, modifications classes, horsepower, displacement limits, all the things. If you're racing with a smaller organization, for instance Northwest Rally, the classes are really simplified. You basically have rear wheel drive, front wheel drive, and all wheel drive classes. Within those classes you generally just have 3. So you have stock, which pretty much is limited to a completely stock vehicle, with the exception of little small things like air filters can be upgraded if they fit in the factory air filter housing, has to have factory exhaust back to the catalytic converter, those sort of things. Then you have the prepared class, which is kind of the next step up, that has some things that would disqualify it, which is what this would. You can modify the exhaust from the cylinder head back. This one does have a header, so that puts us there. You can modify the intake. This one has a Weber carburetor, so it fits there. And then you have modified class, which is everything under the sun goes. So figuring out the classing and what you want to run is really important. If you want to get into the sport and you're looking for a vehicle, it's a good idea to have in mind what class you want to run in, what the limitations are. Do you want to drive a front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, or all wheel drive car? Do you want it to be forced induction? Because that does bump you out of some classes. Also pay close attention to the fine print. A good example is when we were looking at the prepared rear wheel drive class, which we're going to participate in. It specifically says that exhaust modifications from the cylinder head back are allowed. But as we read further in the rules, there were a couple requirements that actually got us that would have disqualified our car. The first was in the prepared class, even though you can modify the entire exhaust system, if your car was equipped with a catalytic converter from the factory, it must still retain a catalytic converter in the exhaust system. We did not have one on the Corolla. When we received the car, it didn't have one at all. So that's a problem. Another problem is they have a 96 decibel volume limit. So I downloaded a little app. Hopefully it's somewhat accurate. When revving the car, it was able to hit 99 or 100 decibels. Either way, it was significantly over the 96 decibel limit. So the solution we're going with, I had this cat laying around from another car that we parted out. This guy is going to allow us to meet that catalytic converter requirement while also quieting down our side dump exhaust quite a bit. This should make us legal on both counts. So as I said, that's a really good example of why you want to read through all of the rules, because on first glance, I thought we were perfectly fine in our classing. Turns out there's a couple modifications I'm going to have to do to the car in order to get it ready for this weekend. Now that you've figured out an organization to race with, you've looked over the rule packet and there's nothing in there that really deters you or looks like the barrier to entry is too high, you want to calculate your costs. So you want to look at their entry fees per race. How much is it going to cost you just to participate? Where are their races located? How far away are they from you? Are you going to be trailering your car to and from the events, or are you going to be driving it? Because that has a substantial impact on the amount of fuel you're going to use, and fuel costs below these days. Is it so far that you're going to have to stay overnight, and which is going to factor in meals, hotel costs, or campsite fees if you're going that route? Once you've figured out all those costs and added them up, you want to use that to come up with a realistic number of races you're going to be able to participate in per year. So you want to take that number of races and use that to realistically set a budget for whatever you're doing. You can use that budget to determine if you're out looking for a car to rally race and you don't have one yet, how much do you actually want to spend on that? If you already have a car, you can use this to set the budget that you have to put into modifications, tires, expendables, those types of things. This is something that's really often overlooked when people are getting into motorsports. They tend to just look at the entry fees and how much that's going to cost, and then immediately start putting together a budget for their car. Then they start going out to events. They realize they got to pay a ton of money for gas to get there and back. They got to take time off work to drive if it's a multi-day event, hotel fees, food, all that, and pretty soon it's costing them thousands and thousands of dollars per trip just to get there and back and participate, and they didn't plan for that. And then maybe they over budgeted for their car, so they put a bunch of money there, and now they can't afford to actually go out and race for the rest of the season. Really important step. I've seen trip up a lot of people, so just a really good exercise to go through. So now we finally get to the fun part, which is the car. So taking all that info you put together to build a budget for the last step, you can either start looking for a car if you don't have one, or if you've already got something in mind, you can figure out what your budget is for consumables. You're gonna wanna look at that first. Tires, brake pads, fuel, oil, all the things you're gonna run through. And then if there's any modifications like suspension or performance, you can figure out what your budget is for those. Now, if you're looking for a car, keep in mind all-wheel drive obviously has a huge advantage when it comes to rally because of the limited traction. But in any class, whether you choose all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive, you are going to be competing with similar vehicles. So you won't actually have an advantage over the people you are racing against. So you already took a look at the classing, so you should have a good idea what you want to participate in, whether it's front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, or all wheel drive, and which class within those: stock, prepared, modified, and modified forced induction. I'd strongly recommend starting out with something cheap like we did, because I think there's a huge advantage to driving something that you have very little personal investment in, because it alleviates a lot of the concerns for the car. So you end up driving it harder, you're able to learn better, you're able to push that car to and beyond the limit, and when you make mistakes, that's when you really learn.
get out and meet people, get on the forums, find somebody, talk to the veterans, because you're going to learn more from them about how you should be driving the course, or insights into the way the course is changing, things that you just won't be thinking about as a new driver. Also, they're going to give you tips on what is going to be the most beneficial thing to upgrade or change on your car. And it's usually not the stuff you think. It's usually the basics. Suspension, tires first, always.
It's car number 72, a 1981 Toyota Corolla. Ryan.
If you're interested in more details on what makes a great rally car, check out the full video that we did just on that topic here. Most importantly, just get out there and get seat time, have fun. It's an amazing sport. Check you guys later. Oh, and we somehow managed to take home a medal. How cool is that? Like and subscribe. Smash that like button.